Sembawang Hot Spring Park is the only natural hot spring that is publicly available in Singapore. Situated next to Sembawang Air Base, it is a couple bus stops away from Yishun Station and is a beautiful park with a good amount of history behind it. Also, it could potentially power Singapore's public housing. Originally, the hot spring was discovered in 1908 by Municipal Ranger Goodall in Chinese merchant Seah Eng Kiong's pineapple estate. After the discovery, Seah decided to build a well near the spring, which became popular with the villagers in nearby Kampong Ayah Penas and the other villages surrounding it, with the water being purported to have healing properties. With the water's popularity, Seah decided to capitalize on it. He sent the water to London for testing, and after finding out that it was similar to other mineral springs, he created the Singapore Natural Mineral Hot Springs Company in 1909, bottled the spring water, aerated it, and sold it under the brand name Zombun, and subsequently Salina. Quoted from a newspaper advert, the drink was said to treat intestinal derangements, which people in the tropics are so frequently met with. The business was rebranded to Singapore Hot Springs Limited in 1914, and in 1921, soft drink manufacturers Fraser and Neave bought over the land and the company, selling the very same water under the brand name Salataris. Apparently, it was also sold as Zom, Singa Water, Vichy Water, and Sparta. The bottling plant was abandoned during the Second World War, and the Japanese military who found the hot spring during their occupation of Singapore went on to build amenities for an onsen for their superior officers. Yes, it was an actual onsen for a period of time in history. Towards the end of the occupation, an Allied air raid that hit the surroundings affected the water flow temporarily. It has mostly recovered by the early 1960s when F&N resumed their spring water bottling. There were several calls for the land to be redeveloped for recreational purposes, with the earliest in 1916, all the way to cases in the 60s, 90s, and the latest being in 2003. The site was to have thermal baths, gardens, restaurants, and even a miniature golf course. But other than a new bottling plant being built, the rest of the plans failed to materialize. Most of the land was acquired by the Ministry of Defence in around 1985, and F&N soon stopped their bottling operations. There were plans for the nearby Sembawang airbase to expand, which led to worries about the spring being out of bounds to the public, and a petition was made by community leaders in Sembawang to keep the hot springs open. The area was closed off in 2002 for a while, but the hot spring was subsequently reopened after 3 months. Although still part of the airbase, the park was separated from it by a tall fence, and it was accessible to the public through a small side gate pavement from 7 AM to 7 PM daily. In the same year, a series of scalding cases occurred, including a case where a diabetic elderly lost 6 toes to gangrene after soaking in the spring. This prompted Singapore General Hospital to warn that people with nerve disorders or diseases affecting blood circulation to be cautious when entering the spring. Maybe because of negative rumours and the lack of anything else substantial about the place, interest in the area steadily decreased, and so did the number of visitors. The Ministry of Defence returned the land to the state in 2016, with the National Parks Board taking over and announcing a 2-year redevelopment plan in 2018. The newly rejuvenated hot spring park opened on 4th January 2020 and is open to the public from 7 AM to 7 PM daily. If you want to come over and visit, there are a few things to take note of. If you're driving in, there is no car park here. The nearest car park is at 114 Yishun Ring Road, around 450 meters away. Bicycles and personal mobility devices are to be secured at the bicycle parking area before entering the premises. Unlike in the 1940s, this hot spring is not an onsen, so do rinse your feet before soaking them in the foot bath, and do not soak your entire body in it. Only eggs are allowed to be cooked at the egg cooking station, not raw chicken or anything else. If you want to cook the eggs, do bring them along with your own buckets and pails. Neither the eggs nor the pails to cook them would be sold here. After you are done with the cooking, empty the used hot water into the drains and not back into the pond or onto the plants. And clean off the peeled off eggshells while you're at it. Although you might be tempted to drink the water like how people used to decades ago, the untreated water that comes out of the hot spring was found to contain 4 to 12 times the amount of chloride than that of the waters found in Choa Chu Kang and Bedok waterworks. The water also contains 3 times the sulfide content than that of tap water. Not to forget the potential presence of harmful bacteria and amoebae, so you might want to think thoroughly before downing a glass of it. Now, with the history and the park advisory over, let's get on to some geography and science. Singapore is not in an active volcanic region, unlike nearby Indonesia or countries that make up the Pacific Ring of Fire. The way the water gets heated up is through the granite bedrock down below. Granite contains more uranium than most other commonly found rocks, and when the uranium decays into thorium, a minuscule amount of heat is released. After hundreds of millions of years of heat is generated and stored in the granite, it becomes a clean source of energy that can generate electricity at a very constant and stable rate. While we do not know the exact source of the water, we do have some educated guesses. The source could be some 12 kilometers away from Bukit Timah, the highest point of Singapore. Water will seep through the soil and rocks to deep underground, get heated up and pressurized, then travel through faults and joints in the rocks to reach Nee Soon Fault and come out of the surface here at Sembawang Hot Spring Park. Although the water that comes out of the spring is only at 70 degrees Celsius, the presence of potassium, sodium and chlorine ions serve as proof that the water has reached a temperature of around 160 degrees at some point. With the temperature gradient of the surrounding rocks measuring at 35 degrees per kilometer, we can derive that the water came from around 3 to 4 kilometers beneath the surface. While that does not seem like a lot, it becomes quite significant when we view it in terms of depth. Most of our underpasses and malls only reach 15 meters deep. Our train systems touched 43 meters at Promenade and Bencoolen stations. The deep tunnel sewage system bottoms out at 55 meters, and the SP Group's electricity tunnel is 60 meters deep. The very furthest we have gone is 150 meters at Jurong Rock Caverns. To put pipes 4 kilometers deep, it will look like this in scale. There is a proposal for a 50 megawatt geothermal plant which could be built underground and span 4 football fields. It will be able to power around 50,000 public housing apartments, which is equivalent to almost the entirety of HDBs in Ang Mo Kio or Punggol, 88% of Yishun, 83% of Bedok, 69% of Tampines, 72% of Woodlands, or 52% of Jurong East and West combined. The energy could be sold at 50 cents per kilowatt hour, half the current tariff, and the plant would still profit immensely, being able to break even with the supposed 200 million USD construction cost within 7.5 years of its 30-year lifespan. And all of this is just one power plant. There could be several, built near neighbourhoods all around Singapore to power housing, MRT systems and industries in the future. Spare heat from the process could also be used for other purposes like industrial heating and district cooling. The wastewater, geothermal brine to be more technical, could be sent back underground to retain the pressure of the water coming up. Alternatively, lithium, a critical component required for batteries, could be extracted from it. Feasibility studies are ongoing and the preliminary findings will be out by early 2024 on whether geothermal energy production is viable and profitable in Singapore. Geothermal energy generation produces around 13 times less carbon dioxide than burning natural gas and 22 times less than that of burning coal. With the country looking to reach net zero emissions by 2050, geothermal power could go a long way for the power sector, which currently produces 40% of all emissions in Singapore. As for the other 45% from industries and 15% from transportation, well, I think I'll cover those on another day.